Hey everybody.
Hey.
We're a little late on this one. We had a late night last night.
Yeah, we were up late working, so we didn't record the video last night, but we did watch the movie last night, so I guess it technically counts.
Yeah, I'm gonna count it.
We also had a friend watch it with us, but it was a different friend than
Mm-hmm.
the other time that we had a friend watch it with us. So we're spreading out the Halloween movie love.
Yeah, yeah, getting everybody in on it. So last night we watched Hush, which I know has it's on Netflix. Been causing a bit of a stir this Halloween season. A lot of people are liking it, and we agree with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was really good.
It was about a deaf and mute best-selling author who lives in the middle of fucking nowhere but has a neighbor within walking distance.
Mm-hmm.
And this crazy serial killer guy just decides to kill her best friend. And then he chases her down because she runs to her friend Maddie's house, who's the deaf girl. So she's banging on the door, but she can't hear her because she's deaf. But so this dude just straight up kills her, and then in doing so realizes that this chick is not noticing that he just killed someone.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you too," and so he makes himself known.
Yeah, he, gets her attention.
Yeah, he gets her attention.
Oh, well, he doesn't get her attention right away. He actually comes in the house
Yeah.
without her noticing
Mm-hmm.
and takes her phone and then sends her pictures taken with her phone from her phone on her laptop.
Yeah.
And so it's like Maddie's phone sent you a message and she's like, the fuck?
Yeah.
And realizes that he had been in the house, but then when she sees him, he's outside the house again.
Yeah. So his thing is he's gonna play with her a little bit before he actually kills her.
He's gonna psychologically torture her.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells her that. And then when she finally wishes she were dead, he's gonna come in and kill her.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, but she's a fucking fighter and she's super badass.
Mm-hmm.
And so she comes out on the other side a little worse for wear, but she's not dead.
And everybody else in the movie's dead.
Everybody's dead. Not, except for her and the cat.
The cat lives. The cat almost dies. Like, you might think either they're gonna either they're gonna cop out and not have the cat be in any danger at any point,
Mhm.
or they're going to kill the cat for shock value.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he goes to kill the cat and then she saves it.
Mm-hmm. Even though she doesn't like her cat.
Yeah.
The cat's name is Bitch.
Yep.
But it's just, it was really interesting to have the protagonist as someone who is deaf, because it adds a different layer of, I don't know what's the word I want to use. It just kind of adds to the suspense a lot.
Yeah.
Just because you're trying to imagine yourself in that situation where you can't hear and trying to track someone without your hearing. But she's totally... I loved her. She was totally badass and so smart. And...
Yeah. She did a couple of panicky, dumb things.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it can be forgiven because someone's trying to murder you.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to be thinking as clearly as you could be. But she gets her shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend that watched it with us, before we started the movie, she was like, because the synopsis is basically a deaf woman who lives out in the boonies is stalked by a serial killer. Alright. I said that weird.
Mm-hmm.
Serial killer. Serial killer. And she was like, I wonder, I mean, if this movie is going to come off as, offensive or condescending to, deaf people.
Yeah.
And I voted that it probably wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like the kind of movie that, from its reputation, it seemed like the kind of movie that was made to be more inclusive to people with disabilities. And I think it pulled that off.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's not really portrayed as being disabled in any way.
No.
She just doesn't have the use of one of the senses that most people do.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets around fine.
Yeah.
She wasn't born deaf either,
No.
which actually, I don't know if that makes it more or less scary. Because if she was born deaf, then she would, I guess, be more used to it. And it would never freak her out that she couldn't hear.
Yeah.
But she lost her hearing as a teenager when she contracted bacterial meningitis. So, I don't know, maybe that does make it more scary.
Yeah, but it also, I feel like, because the one, multiple times throughout the movie, she talks about the voice in her head. And she was, and her friend's like, well, does it sound like you? Just because, like, you know.
Like, does it sound like you as a kid?
As a kid, just because she was 13 when it happened. And it does come off funny, though, at first, because she's like, you're hearing voices in your head?
Yeah.
But she's like, no, it's my mother's voice. And so, at the beginning, she's trying to work on her next novel. She's trying to follow up her breakout bestseller.
Well, and it turns out the way that she writes, she will write like multiple different endings to a book. Because the way that she sees it in her head, there's multiple parallel stories and she has to pick out the best one. So she's looking at this document on her laptop that there are like different files, and there's like 7 different endings to this same book that she's looking through and trying to decide what works. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. And then later, that voice in her head comes into play because she's trying to figure out how she can get out of this situation alive. So she's thinking of every possible move she could make and counter move that the killer could make. And so that was a neat scene.
Yeah, it was set up pretty well. They pulled it off. I did think it was kind of cool because they don't actually... She doesn't like sit down and say, okay, I'm going into writer mode.
Yeah.
It just starts happening. So you think that something's happening the first time. And you're like, oh, what the hell? That was really weird. And then it goes back to her, like, before that happened, and you're like, oh, that was just her imagining what could go down. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, that was really cool. But the stuff that this guy does to her is super fucked up. Like, so, like, she doesn't realize that her best friend from down the road has been killed. And so, at one point, though, to let her know that she's dead, he uses her dead body to knock on the window to get her attention.
Yeah, like he holds the body up to the window and like moves her arm to tap on the window with her hand.
He also cuts off the ear of the dead girl in front of Maddie to just like fuck with her.
Yeah.
And then also, and so like this kind of like back and forth goes on for a little while. Well, then the husband, John, of the girl from Sarah is the girl from down the lane.
Yeah.
Her husband, John, shows up looking for her because he knew that she had gone over to her house, but she wasn't back home when he had gotten home from work. And so the killer pretends to be the cops.
Yeah. Like he just comes out of nowhere with a flashlight, shining at John's face and starts talking authoritatively.
Yeah. And John is just like, oh shit, it's the cops. I better do what he says. And then as it goes on, there's holes in his story and he starts to figure stuff out. And then he tries to kill him with a rock, but Maddie bangs on the door and so the killer looks up and sees that he's trying to hit him over the head with a rock. And so then John gets stabbed.
I think it was even worse than that because I'm pretty sure the killer knew that John was going to come at him. Yeah. Like he realized that his story was wearing thin, but he kept playing along with it so that John didn't realize that he knew that John knew. Yeah. And so when Maddie bangs on the door, she distracts John. And that's when the killer comes in and just puts the knife in his jugular. And John still almost manages to choke him out
Yeah.
while he's bleeding out.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty impressive.
We were like on the couch like rooting for him.
Yeah.
We're like, get him!
Yeah. Yeah, and it was right after that part that she sat down and she was like, okay, these are my choices.
Yeah. Also, very interesting use of weapons in this film. The killer chooses to use a knife and a crossbow.
A very heavy crossbow.
Yeah, like Daryl style crossbow.
Yeah. Like the kind of crossbow that you could hunt a person with.
Yeah.
Like he clearly carries it for the intention of killing people.
And he keeps tallies of who he's killed
Like,
on his crossbow.
He has like hash marks scratched into the crossbow.
Because Maddie does at one point get the crossbow from him.
Mm-hmm.
So all he has is his knife.
And we were immediately like, there's no fucking way she's going to be able to load that thing.
Yeah, because she had
And
just
we
been
were
shot.
right.
She had just been shot in the leg
Yeah.
by the crossbow.
Yeah,
so she is hurt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's bleeding a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
And then...
well, and that was realistic, too.
Mhm.
That's the thing about this movie, that the things that happen are realistic, with one exception. But, like, she gets shot in the leg, she pulls the bolt out, which you shouldn't do, I think, but she doesn't know that, apparently, and she's bleeding a lot, like you would. And she bandages it up and disinfects it, but in a lot of movies, that would be the end of that. She'd limp, but that would be the end of it. In this, she's like, you're going to bleed out. To herself. She's like, you're bleeding a lot. This is not good. We need to take care of this or you're just going to bleed to death. There was a lot of stuff that they did realistically that a lot of movies might not have.
Yeah, and like the fact that she couldn't load the crossbow.
Mm-hmm. She eventually was able to do it, but she had to, like, she hurt herself in the process. Like, it was not easy.
Yeah. And...
the one thing that wasn't realistic, I do want to mention that. The killer shuts off the power to her house
Ow.
by turning off the main breaker, which is outside the house.
Yeah.
Her breaker box is just mounted to the side of her house.
And it's not locked or anything.
Nope.
No.
Nope, he just pops it open, turns the power off. And that's so that she can't use her laptop to call for help. Because he has her phone, but her laptop's on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And apparently she's close enough to the neighbor's house that she can access their Wi-Fi, but she doesn't know their password.
Which is also unrealistic, because if you have ever been at anyone's house at least one time, you know their fucking Wi-Fi password.
Yeah. Or you at least have it saved in your device. But, now that I think of it, she might have only been over there with her phone and not her computer. Meh.
She's a writer. She would remember shit like that.
Yeah, maybe. Anywho, I was impressed with the level of realism in the movie.
Yeah, that was really good. So eventually it all builds up to the killer, because she fires at him with the crossbow, and he's like, okay, that's it. I'm fucking coming in the house.
Yeah.
Because she gets him in
He's
the
like,
shoulder.
I'm not going to break this one, and she's probably going to figure out a way to kill me if I don't get in there and finish it.
Yeah. And so he's like, so she ends up locking herself in her bathroom. And it's not really explained, but he, like, comes in through the wall. Like, you see sparks, and I'm assuming that he's, like, cutting through the wall with something.
But she would have noticed that.
But she would have noticed that, because
She
she's
would've.
sensitive to vibration.
Right. She would feel that.
But he tries to sneak up on her from behind, and he ends up breathing on her neck, which she does notice.
Yeah, it doesn't make... It's not actually clear
how he gets inside.
how he gets inside, because she's sitting with her back to the tub.
Yeah, and then there's
he's in
sparks
the tub.
behind her. Yeah. Like, you see sparks, so you're like, is he just cutting through the wall with a saw?
Yeah, no, because she totally would have felt that.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
So as he goes to stab her, she whips around and catches him in the knee with a kitchen knife.
Yep.
It
gets hairy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like she surprises him and takes him out all in one thing.
No.
Like, it comes down to grappling on the floor.
Yeah, and he's choking her out, and she's about to die.
It was tense.
And then she kills him with a corkscrew.
Yeah, through the neck.
Just through the neck. Which you're like, that doesn't happen that way.
I feel like it was a far longer corkscrew than anybody would ever need. It was long enough to go all the way through the dude's neck.
Yeah. Maybe he had a skinny neck.
Oh, no.
But I was going to say, this movie was also very different from what we've chosen so far, just because it was a true horror movie.
Yeah, a lot of the other stuff was Halloween-themed movies.
Or funny horror movies.
Yeah, there have been several horror comedies. We've only got 3 movies left.
Mm-hmm.
We may have 2 more straight-up horror movies. Yeah. But we went a pretty non-traditional route.
Yeah,
for these movies.
I was going to say, at this point, like I said, a lot of people are talking about this film, so you've probably heard about it or seen it pop up on your Netflix, so definitely go watch it.
Well, there's another movie by the same director, Oculus.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we considered watching that in place of Phantasm Ravager and decided on Cat's Eye instead. Mm-hmm. Which I am kind of glad that we did, especially because we already had this in there and we didn't realize it was the same director, and we don't necessarily want to do a bunch of movies from the same people. Although we had 2 Drew Barrymore movies. But we do want to watch that one too because we were impressed with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome stuff.
Yeah. So check it out if you like horror movies.
Yeah.
It's new. It's fresh.
It's unique. It is.
It is.
It is. It's different. And it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, this was a pretty straightforward film, so pretty straightforward review.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later today, then.
Yes. Sorry about the lateness.
Double feature today.
This means something very different in most countries.
It does.
Bye!